The autumn rain fell steadily on the cobblestones of the palace courtyard, creating small rivers that wound their way toward the ancient drainage grates. Camilla stood at her bedroom window on the third floor, watching the water cascade down the glass panes. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the velvet curtains. Behind her, 3 expensive leather suitcases sat packed and ready near the door. She had been planning this moment for weeks, each detail carefully considered, each step rehearsed in her mind countless times during sleepless nights. The clock on the mantelpiece showed 3:30 in the morning. In exactly 30 minutes, a private car would arrive at the east gate, the one used for deliveries and service vehicles. The driver had been paid handsomely to ask no questions and to ensure his silence afterward. Camilla had used a false name when making the arrangements, and the money had come from her personal account, one that nobody else monitored. Everything had been arranged with precision. Her flight departed at 6, giving her just enough time to reach the airport and clear security before the palace staff began their morning routines. She turned away from the window and walked to the full-length mirror beside her wardrobe. The woman staring back at her looked tired, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion and worry. She wore a simple navy coat over dark trousers and comfortable shoes, nothing that would draw attention. Her jewelry boxes sat empty on the dressing table. She had packed only what was necessary, leaving behind the tiaras, the ceremonial pieces, anything that would identify her as royalty. In her handbag, she carried a passport under her maiden name, credit cards that could not be easily traced, and enough cash to last several months if needed. The decision to leave had not come easily. For months, she had endured the suffocating protocols, the constant scrutiny, the endless criticism from the press and public alike. Every move she made was analyzed, every word twisted, every gesture photographed and debated. The palace walls that were supposed to protect her had become a prison. The family that had welcomed her with smiles during the wedding had grown cold and distant. Conversations were formal and brief. Meals were silent affairs filled with tension. She felt like a stranger in her own home, an outsider who would never truly belong no matter how hard she tried. The final straw had come 3 days earlier during a private family dinner. Words had been exchanged, accusations made. She had been blamed for matters beyond her control, criticized for decisions she had never been part of making. The injustice of it all had burned in her chest. That night, lying awake beside her sleeping husband, she had made the choice. She would leave. She would go somewhere far away where nobody knew her face, where she could breathe freely without cameras following her every step. Camilla picked up her phone and checked the message from the driver. He was already on his way, approaching from the south entrance as planned. She took a deep breath and grabbed the handle of the first suitcase. It was heavier than she remembered, filled with clothes, documents, and a few precious photographs she could not bear to leave behind. She dragged it to the door and opened it slowly, checking the hallway. Empty and silent, just as she had hoped. The night security guards usually patrolled the main corridors, rarely venturing to this wing where the family apartments were located. She made 3 trips, moving each suitcase quietly down the back staircase that the staff used. Her heart pounded with each step, every creak of the old wooden stairs making her freeze and listen for approaching footsteps. But the palace remained quiet, its residents asleep, unaware of her departure. When she reached the ground floor, she paused in the shadows of the servants' hallway, catching her breath. The east gate was only 200 meters away through a covered passage. She could see the dim security lights marking the path. Pulling her hood up against the rain, Camilla began the final walk toward freedom. The suitcases rolled smoothly on the polished stone floor. Her phone buzzed with another message. The car had arrived and was waiting just outside the gate. The driver confirmed he was ready to leave immediately. Everything was going according to plan. Relief began to wash over her. In a few minutes, she would be in the car, heading to the airport, leaving all of this behind. As she approached the east gate, she noticed something strange. The usual single guard who stood at this entrance had been joined by 3 others. They stood in formation, blocking the gateway. Bright floodlights had been turned on, illuminating the entire area. Her steps slowed. This was not normal. This was not right. The guards wore their formal uniforms rather than the casual attire typically worn for night duty. Their faces were serious, alert. Captain Williams, the head of palace security, stepped forward from the group. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Camilla had seen him countless times but had rarely spoken to him directly. He always maintained a professional distance, a shadow that protected the family while remaining invisible. But tonight he was very visible, very present, and very much in her way. "Your Royal Highness," he said formally, his voice echoing in the covered passage. "I must ask you to stop." Camilla felt her stomach drop. Her fingers tightened around the suitcase handle. "Captain Williams," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am simply going for an early morning appointment. Please let me pass." "I am afraid I cannot do that, Your Highness." He did not move aside. The other guards remained in position, creating an impenetrable wall between her and the gate. "I have received specific orders regarding your departure. You are not authorized to leave the palace grounds at this time." "Orders?" The word came out sharper than she intended. "From whom? I am not a prisoner here. I have every right to come and go as I please." Captain Williams maintained his calm expression, but she could see the determination in his stance. "The orders come from His Majesty himself. I received them 20 minutes ago. All exits have been secured. Your driver has been turned away from the premises. I must respectfully ask you to return to your quarters. 20 minutes ago, someone had known. Someone had discovered her plan and alerted the king. But who? She had been so careful, so secretive. The realization hit her like cold water. She had been betrayed, but by whom remained a mystery. Her mind raced through possibilities. A servant who had seen her packing? The driver who had taken her money? Someone monitoring her bank accounts? It could have been anyone, and if I refuse, she asked, though she already knew the answer, then I will be forced to escort you back myself. Captain Williams replied, "This does not need to be difficult, Your Highness. Please cooperate." The other guards moved slightly closer, their message clear. She was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Her escape plan, so carefully constructed, had collapsed completely. The car that had been her salvation was gone. The flight she had booked would leave without her. Everything she had hoped for was slipping away. Camilla stared at the guards blocking her path, her mind frantically searching for options that did not exist. The rain continued to fall outside the covered passage, and she could hear it drumming against the ancient stone. Captain Williams stood firm, waiting for her response. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and shattered hopes. "I want to speak to my husband," she finally said, straightening her shoulders and trying to reclaim some dignity. "Immediately." "His Royal Highness has been informed of the situation," Captain Williams replied. "He is aware you attempted to leave. However, he has instructed me to handle this matter first. He will speak with you tomorrow morning during breakfast." Tomorrow morning. The words felt like a prison sentence. By tomorrow morning, her flight would have landed in Switzerland. She would have been checking into the small hotel she had booked under her false name. Instead, she would be sitting across from her husband at the formal dining table, trying to explain why she had packed her bags in the middle of the night like a thief. "My luggage," she said, gesturing to the 3 suitcases beside her. "I will take them back to my room myself." Captain Williams shook his head slowly. "I am afraid that is not possible, Your Highness. My orders are clear. All luggage must be seized and inspected immediately. We need to document everything you intended to take with you." The word seized hit her like a slap. "You want to search my personal belongings? That is absolutely unacceptable. Those suitcases contain private items. You have no right." "I have every right when palace security is involved," the captain interrupted, his tone remaining respectful but firm. "These are direct orders from His Majesty. The contents must be catalogued. There are concerns about what might be leaving the palace." "Concerns?" Anger flared in her chest, hot and sudden. "What exactly do you think I am stealing? My own clothes? My own photographs? Everything in those cases belongs to me personally." "That will be determined during the inspection," Captain Williams said. He gestured to the 2 younger guards. "Please take the luggage to the security office. Handle everything carefully and with respect." The guards moved forward and Camilla instinctively stepped in front of her suitcases. "No, absolutely not. I forbid this," but her words carried no weight here. The guards carefully but firmly moved around her and took hold of the luggage. She watched helplessly as they lifted her carefully packed cases and carried them away down a different corridor. Everything she had packed, every item chosen with such care, was being taken from her. The powerlessness was overwhelming. "This is humiliating," she whispered, more to herself than to Captain Williams. "I understand this is difficult," he said, and for the first time she detected a hint of sympathy in his voice. "But I am following my orders. If you believe they are unjust, you must take that up with His Majesty. My job is to ensure palace security, nothing more." Camilla felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. She would not cry in front of these guards. She would not give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break down. Taking a deep breath, she pulled her coat tighter around herself. "Fine, take me back to my quarters then, since I am apparently under house arrest." "You are not under arrest, Your Highness," Captain Williams clarified. "You are simply being asked to remain in the palace until this matter is resolved." "There is a significant difference." "Is there?" She could not keep the bitterness from her voice. "It feels remarkably similar from where I stand." Captain Williams extended his arm, indicating the direction back toward the main palace. "If you please, Your Highness, I will escort you personally." They walked in silence through the empty corridors. Their footsteps echoed off the marble floors and high ceilings. Portraits of long-dead royals stared down at them from the walls. Camilla had always found those paintings oppressive, all those stern faces judging the living. Tonight they seemed even more condemning. She wondered if any of them had ever tried to escape, if any had felt as trapped as she did now. When they reached her apartment door, Captain Williams stopped. "I must ask you to remain inside until morning. A guard will be stationed in the hallway to ensure your safety." "To ensure I do not try to leave again, you mean?" she corrected him. He did not deny it. "Try to get some rest, Your Highness. Tomorrow will be a long day." Camilla entered her apartment and closed the door firmly behind her. The space that had been her sanctuary now felt like a cage. She leaned against the door, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of her failure. Everything had gone wrong. Someone had betrayed her, but she still did not know who. The king had been alerted, security mobilized, her escape route blocked. She was back where she started. Only now everyone knew she had tried to leave. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark grounds. Somewhere out there, the driver she had hired was probably confused, maybe even worried. He had been paid to ask no questions, but he must wonder what happened to his passenger. The plane ticket she had purchased sat unused in her handbag. The hotel reservation would go unclaimed. All that planning, all that hope, wasted. Her phone rang, making her jump. She pulled it from her pocket and saw her sister's name on the screen. With shaking hands, she answered. "Hello?" "Camilla, thank God." Her sister's voice came through, tight with worry. "I just got your message. Are you all right? Did you make it out?" She had sent her sister a brief text earlier, letting her know she was leaving. Someone needed to know where she was going in case something went wrong. "No," Camilla replied quietly. "They stopped me. Security was waiting at the gate. They took my luggage. I am back in my room." Her sister was silent for a moment. "They knew. Someone told them?" "Yes." Camilla sat down heavily on her bed. "But I do not know who. I was so careful. What are you going to do now?" "I honestly do not know. They want to inspect everything I packed. Tomorrow I have to face everyone and explain myself. This is a disaster." "You were just trying to save yourself," her sister said fiercely. "You have nothing to apologize for. They have made your life unbearable. That will not matter to them. All they will see is someone who tried to run away, who tried to abandon her duties." Camilla felt exhaustion washing over her. "I should let you go." "It is late. Call me tomorrow," her sister insisted. "After you talk to them. I want to know you are okay." "I will. I promise." After ending the call, Camilla lay back on her bed, still fully dressed. Sleep seemed impossible, but she closed her eyes anyway. Outside her door, she heard the guard take up his position. The sound of his boots on the floor was a reminder that she was being watched. Her attempt at freedom had failed spectacularly, and now she would face the consequences. The morning would bring questions, accusations, and judgment. But tonight, in these dark hours before dawn, she allowed herself to grieve for the life she almost had, the freedom that had been so close she could taste it before it was ripped away. Morning arrived too quickly. Camilla had barely slept, drifting in and out of troubled dreams. When dawn finally broke through her windows, she forced herself to get up and prepare for whatever confrontation awaited her. She showered and dressed carefully, choosing a conservative dress and minimal makeup. Every choice felt strategic now, every detail a potential weapon that could be used against her. At 8 o'clock sharp, there was a knock at her door. A young assistant she recognized from the king's office stood in the hallway. Your Highness, His Majesty requests your presence in the private study. Immediately, if you please. Camilla nodded and followed the assistant through the maze of corridors. They passed servants who quickly looked away, their faces carefully neutral. Word had obviously spread throughout the palace. Everyone knew she had tried to leave. She could feel their eyes on her back, could sense the whispers that would start the moment she was out of earshot. The king's private study was located in the oldest part of the palace. It was a room filled with dark wood paneling, leather-bound books, and the heavy scent of tobacco. Her father-in-law sat behind a massive oak desk, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed papers. He did not look up when she entered. Captain Williams stood near the window, and her husband sat in one of the leather chairs, his expression unreadable. "Sit down." "Camilla," the king said without preamble, finally lifting his eyes to meet hers. His gaze was cold, assessing. She had never felt particularly welcome in his presence, but today the chill was especially pronounced. She sat in the chair across from his desk, keeping her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. "Your Majesty, would you care to explain what happened last night?" He removed his glasses and set them aside. "What exactly were you thinking? Attempting to leave the palace like a fugitive in the middle of the night?" "I was not a fugitive," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I was simply leaving. I have that right." "You have no such right," her husband spoke up, his voice sharp. "Not without discussing it with the family first. Not without considering the consequences of your actions. Do you have any idea what kind of scandal this would have caused?" "A scandal?" She turned to look at him. "Is that all you care about? Not why I wanted to leave, not what drove me to such desperate measures, just the scandal? We can discuss your grievances later," the king interrupted. "First, I want to address the contents of your luggage. Captain Williams has completed the inspection. The findings are quite interesting." Captain Williams stepped forward, carrying a leather folder. He placed it on the desk and opened it, revealing several photographs and a typed inventory list. "Your Highness, we documented everything in the 3 suitcases. Most items were personal effects, as you claimed. Clothing, toiletries, photographs. However, there were several items that raised serious concerns." Camilla felt her heart rate increase. "What concerns?" "Everything I packed belongs to me." The captain pulled out one of the photographs. "This is a copy of a private family document, a letter written by the late queen to her son shortly before her death. This letter is considered part of the royal archives. It should not have been in your possession, and it certainly should not have been leaving the palace." She stared at the photograph. The letter had been given to her by her husband years ago, during a moment when he was feeling nostalgic about his mother. He had wanted to share it with her, had said it would help her understand the family better. "That letter was a gift," she said. "My husband gave it to me himself." "I gave you permission to read it," her husband corrected. "Not to keep it. Not to take it out of the country. We also found these," Captain Williams continued, pulling out more photographs. "Financial documents, bank statements, investment reports, property deeds. All of these contain sensitive information about the family's private holdings." "Why would you need these documents?" "Because they involve my money too," Camilla said, her voice rising. "Those investment reports include my personal accounts. The property deed is for a cottage I inherited from my grandmother. These are not palace secrets. These are my own financial matters. Mixed in with family documents," the king noted, "which makes it difficult to determine where palace property ends and your personal property begins. This is precisely why we have protocols. This is why you should have consulted with the family solicitor before packing anything." Camilla felt frustration building. They were twisting everything, making her sound like a thief when all she had done was pack her own belongings. "This is ridiculous. You are treating me like a criminal for taking my own papers." "There is more," Captain Williams said quietly. He pulled out a small velvet box. "This was found in the lining of your second suitcase, hidden, not packed openly with the other items." He opened the box to reveal a diamond bracelet. Camilla recognized it immediately. It was one of the pieces from the royal collection, an antique bracelet that had belonged to various queens over the centuries. She had worn it exactly twice, both times to state functions where formal jewelry was required. "That bracelet was in the safe in my room," she said slowly. "I did not pack it. I specifically left all royal jewelry behind because I knew it did not belong to me. And yet it was found in your luggage," the king said, "hidden in the lining. How do you explain that?" Her mind raced. Someone had put it there. Someone had planted the bracelet in her suitcase to make her look guilty of theft. But who and why? I cannot explain it because I did not put it there. Someone else did. Someone who wanted to make this situation worse. That is a serious accusation, her husband said. You are suggesting someone in this palace deliberately framed you? Yes, that is exactly what I am suggesting. She looked at each of them in turn. Someone knew I was leaving. Someone alerted security. And that same person planted evidence in my luggage to make me look like a thief. I want to know who it was. The king leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Or perhaps you packed the bracelet intending to sell it later to fund your new life abroad. Perhaps you thought no one would notice it missing for weeks or months. That is absurd, Camilla protested. Why would I risk stealing a bracelet when I have my own money? I have my own accounts, my own resources. I do not need to steal from the family. Do you? The king's eyes narrowed. Because our financial advisors inform me that your personal accounts have been steadily depleted over the past 6 months. Large withdrawals, cash payments, unusual transfers. You have spent a considerable amount preparing for this departure. She felt heat rising to her cheeks. Yes, she had withdrawn money to pay for the car service, the flight, the hotel bookings. She had used cash when possible to avoid creating a paper trail. But that did not make her a thief. I used my own money to make my own arrangements. That is not a crime. It suggests premeditation, Captain Williams said. It suggests you have been planning this escape for quite some time. Which raises the question, what else might you have been planning? What else might you have taken that we have not yet discovered? Nothing, Camilla said firmly. I took nothing that did not belong to me. Someone planted that bracelet and I intend to find out who. We have already begun an investigation, the king informed her. Every servant who had access to your quarters will be questioned. The security footage from the hallways will be reviewed. If someone did plant evidence, we will discover who it was. But until then, you remain under suspicion. Her husband stood up abruptly. I think we have established enough for now. Camilla, you will remain in the palace. You will not leave the grounds under any circumstances. You will surrender your passport and all travel documents to Captain Williams, and you will cooperate fully with the investigation. She wanted to argue, wanted to fight back against these restrictions, but she could see it was pointless. They had already decided she was guilty. The bracelet had sealed her fate, whether she had packed it or not. Fine, she said quietly. May I return to my room now? Yes, the king said. But understand this, Camilla. If we discover you were planning to steal from this family, there will be serious consequences. Royal or not, wife or not, no one is above the law. The next 3 days passed in a blur of interrogations and forced confinement. Camilla remained in her apartment while the investigation proceeded. Meals were brought to her room by servants who refused to meet her eyes. Her phone had been confiscated along with her passport and laptop. She was allowed no contact with the outside world except for one brief supervised call to her sister to assure her she was safe. On the 4th morning, Captain Williams arrived at her door with a female officer Camilla had not seen before. Your Highness, this is Lieutenant Morrison. She will be conducting an interview with you regarding the events of that night. Please understand this is standard procedure. Lieutenant Morrison was a woman in her 30s with sharp features and intelligent eyes. She carried a recording device and a notepad. Your Highness, thank you for agreeing to speak with me. I would like to go through your timeline again, step by step. Even small details might be important. They sat in Camilla's living room, and for the next 2 hours the lieutenant asked question after question. Where did she buy the suitcases? When did she first contact the car service? Who knew about her plans? How did she obtain a passport under her maiden name? Every answer was scrutinized, every detail examined. Let me ask you directly, Lieutenant Morrison said. Did you at any point handle the diamond bracelet found in your luggage? Only twice, when I wore it to official functions, Camilla replied. Both times it was removed from the safe by the royal jeweler, and afterward it was returned directly to the safe. I never touched it outside of those occasions. Who has access to that safe? The head housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, the king's private secretary, and my husband. Camilla paused. Anyone with the combination could access it, I suppose. And who knew the combination? I am not certain. It was changed regularly for security purposes. I was never given the current code. When I needed to access my own items, I had to request that Mrs. Patterson open it for me. Lieutenant Morrison made notes. Tell me about your relationship with Mrs. Patterson. Camilla considered the question carefully. Mrs. Patterson was a woman in her 60s who had worked at the palace for over 40 years. She was efficient, professional, and had always treated Camilla with polite distance. We have never been close. She is loyal to the family, especially to the king. She made it clear from the beginning that I was an outsider who needed to prove myself worthy of being here. Did she have any reason to want you to leave? I cannot say for certain, but she never approved of me. She thought my background was too ordinary, my manners too informal. She once told me directly that I did not understand the traditions of the palace and probably never would. The lieutenant looked up from her notes. That sounds like someone who might want you gone. Perhaps. But would she plant evidence to accomplish that? It seems extreme even for her. People do extreme things when they believe they are protecting something important, Lieutenant Morrison observed. To someone like Mrs. Patterson, the reputation and security of the royal family might justify any action. The interview continued for another hour before the lieutenant finally closed her notebook. Thank you for your cooperation, Your Highness. I will be speaking with several other individuals over the next few days. I suggest you try to remain patient. After they left, Camilla sat alone in her apartment, thinking through everything that had been discussed. Mrs. Patterson had access, opportunity, and possibly motive, but something about it did not feel right. The housekeeper was meticulous and proud. Would she really risk her position and reputation by planting evidence? There had to be something else, some piece of the puzzle she was missing. That evening, a different visitor arrived. Her husband entered without knocking, something he rarely did anymore. They had been sleeping in separate rooms for months, their marriage reduced to public appearances and formal conversations. He looked tired, older than his years. We need to talk, he said without preamble. About what? Have you come to accuse me of more crimes? She could not keep the bitterness from her voice. He flinched at her tone but sat down across from her. The investigation is not going well. Every person we interview has an alibi or a perfectly reasonable explanation. The security footage shows nothing unusual. It is as if the bracelet simply appeared in your suitcase by magic. Because someone was very careful, Camilla said. Someone who knows the palace systems, who understands how to avoid cameras and suspicion. Or because you packed it yourself and created this elaborate story to avoid responsibility. He held up his hand when she started to protest. I am not saying I believe that. I am telling you what the king believes, and what he believes matters. What about what you believe? She looked at him directly. Do you think I am a thief? Do you think I would steal from your family? He was silent for a long moment. I do not know what to think anymore. I do not know who you are, Camilla. The woman I married would not have tried to run away in the middle of the night. She would have talked to me, worked through problems, found solutions together. Instead, you planned this elaborate escape and told me nothing. Because talking to you would have accomplished nothing, she said quietly. When was the last time you truly listened to me? When did you last ask how I was feeling or what I needed? You have been so consumed with duty and appearances that you forgot I am a person, not just a role to be filled. That is not fair. Is it not? When was the last time we had dinner alone, just the two of us? When did we last have a real conversation that was not about schedules or public events? You stopped seeing me months ago. I became invisible in this palace, and you let it happen. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. You are right. I have not been present. I have let my family dictate how we live, how we interact. But running away was not the answer. It would have destroyed everything we built together. We built nothing, Camilla said sadly. We performed a marriage for the cameras while slowly becoming strangers. I could not live like that anymore. I needed to find myself again, to remember who I was before all of this. He turned to face her. And the bracelet? If you did not take it, who did? I have been thinking about that constantly. Someone who had access to my room, who knew I was leaving, who wanted to ensure I would be caught and disgraced. Someone who benefits from my downfall. There are many people in this palace who would prefer you gone, he admitted. My father never truly accepted you. Several of the senior staff believe you are not suitable. Even some family members think our marriage was a mistake. Then the list of suspects is quite long. Camilla felt exhaustion settling over her. But unless we find proof, I will always be suspected. The bracelet will hang over me forever. The lieutenant is thorough. She will find the truth. Will she? Or will she find the truth that your father wants her to find? Camilla stood up and faced him. I need to know something. If it comes down to choosing between me and your family, which will you choose? He hesitated, and that hesitation told her everything she needed to know. I hope it never comes to that, but it already has, she said softly. It came to that the night I packed my bags. It came to that the moment you sided with your father instead of asking why I felt I had no choice but to leave. You have already chosen, and it was not me. He opened his mouth to respond but closed it again. There were no words that could bridge the distance between them now. Finally, he simply nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Camilla sank back into her chair, feeling more alone than ever. The investigation would continue, the truth would remain hidden, and she would stay trapped in this gilded cage with no escape in sight. On the 7th day of her confinement, something unexpected happened. A young maid named Sophie knocked on Camilla's door late in the evening. Sophie was barely 20 years old, new to the palace staff, and had always been kind to Camilla with genuine warmth rather than practiced courtesy. "Your Highness," Sophie whispered, glancing nervously down the hallway. "I need to speak with you privately. It is important." Camilla quickly pulled her inside and closed the door. "What is it?" "You look frightened." Sophie's hands were shaking. "I saw something that night. The night you tried to leave. I did not say anything before because I was scared, but I cannot keep quiet anymore. It is not right what they are doing to you." "What did you see?" Camilla's heart began to race. "I was working late that night cleaning the guest wing. Around 2 in the morning, I saw someone in the hallway near your apartment. They were carrying something small, moving very quietly. I hid behind a curtain because I was not supposed to be in that area. I watched them go into your room. Who was it?" "Did you see their face?" Sophie nodded slowly. "It was Lady Victoria, your husband's cousin." Camilla felt shock ripple through her. Lady Victoria was a woman in her 40s, elegant and sophisticated, who had always treated Camilla with barely concealed contempt. She was influential within the family, close to the king, and had been vocal about her disapproval of the marriage from the beginning. But planting evidence seemed beyond even her cruelty. "Are you absolutely certain it was her?" "Yes, Your Highness. She was wearing a dark coat and a scarf, but I recognized her face when she passed under the hallway light. She was inside your room for maybe 5 minutes, then she left the same way she came, very quiet, very careful. Why did you not report this immediately?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "Because Lady Victoria is powerful. If I accused her without proof, I would lose my position. My family depends on my income. I was afraid, but then I heard them questioning Mrs. Patterson today, suggesting she planted the bracelet. Mrs. Patterson has always been kind to me. She does not deserve to be blamed for something she did not do." Camilla pulled Sophie into a chair. "You did the right thing by coming to me now. But we need to be smart about this. Lady Victoria will deny everything if we accuse her directly. We need evidence. There might be security footage," Sophie suggested. "The cameras in the hallways record everything. Captain Williams already reviewed all the footage. He said there was nothing unusual." Camilla thought for a moment. "Unless Lady Victoria knew how to avoid the cameras. She has lived in this palace her entire life. She would know every blind spot, every angle. What should we do? First, we need to get this information to Lieutenant Morrison without putting you at risk. And we need to understand why Lady Victoria would do this. What does she gain from framing me?" Sophie hesitated. "Your Highness, may I speak freely?" "Please do. There have been rumors among the staff. Nothing confirmed, just whispers. Some say that Lady Victoria has always been in love with your husband, that she expected to marry him before you came along. She comes from the right background, the right family. When he chose you instead, she was furious. Camilla had heard similar rumors but had dismissed them as palace gossip. Now they took on a darker significance. If she wants me gone so she can pursue him, planting evidence would accomplish that goal. Our marriage would be destroyed, I would be disgraced and possibly face legal charges. She could then position herself as his comfort and support." "Exactly." Sophie looked at her earnestly. "Your Highness, I am willing to tell Lieutenant Morrison what I saw. I will take the risk if it means telling the truth." "No." Camilla made her decision quickly. "You will tell her, but we need to protect you. I will ask my sister to arrange legal representation for you first. You will not face Lady Victoria alone." Over the next hour, Camilla used Sophie's phone to contact her sister and explain the situation. Her sister, who worked as a barrister in London, immediately understood the gravity of the revelation. She promised to find protection for Sophie and to contact Lieutenant Morrison through proper channels. The following morning, Lieutenant Morrison arrived at Camilla's apartment with Captain Williams. Their expressions were serious but also showed something Camilla had not seen before: doubt about the official narrative. "Your Highness," Lieutenant Morrison began, "we have received new information from a witness. A maid named Sophie has come forward with testimony about the night in question. She claims to have seen Lady Victoria entering your apartment around 2 in the morning." Captain Williams added, "We have gone back through the security footage with this information in mind. Lady Victoria's movements that night were not initially flagged as suspicious because she has unrestricted access to most areas of the palace. However, when we traced her path carefully, we discovered she did indeed pass through the corridor leading to your quarters during the window of time in question. We confronted Lady Victoria an hour ago," Lieutenant Morrison continued. "She admits she was in that area of the palace, but claims she was simply unable to sleep and went for a walk. She denies entering your apartment." "But you do not believe her," Camilla observed. "We are skeptical," the lieutenant admitted. "Her explanation seems convenient. And there is another factor. We examined the bracelet more carefully. There were 2 sets of fingerprints on it. Yours, from when you wore it previously, and one other set that we have now identified through our database." Camilla waited, hardly daring to breathe. "Lady Victoria's fingerprints are on the bracelet," Captain Williams said. "She handled it at some point. When we asked her about this, she claimed she was present when the jeweler last cleaned the piece several months ago, and may have touched it then. But we spoke to the jeweler, and he says Lady Victoria was not present during any cleaning. So she is lying," Camilla said. "She is at minimum being dishonest about her interaction with the bracelet." Lieutenant Morrison agreed. "We need to investigate further. We are requesting access to Lady Victoria's financial records, phone records, anything that might establish a motive or pattern of behavior." "She will fight this," Captain Williams warned. "Lady Victoria has significant influence with the king. She will claim this is a witch hunt, that we are trying to deflect blame from you onto an innocent family member." "Let her fight," Camilla said firmly. "The truth matters more than her influence. If she did this, she must face consequences regardless of her position." Lieutenant Morrison looked at her with respect. "I agree, Your Highness. No one is above the law, not even those born into privilege. We will pursue this investigation wherever it leads." After they left, Camilla allowed herself to feel hope for the first time in days. The truth was emerging, slowly and painfully, but it was coming to light. Sophie's courage had made the difference. One person willing to speak up had changed everything. Now they needed to build a case strong enough that even Lady Victoria's connections could not protect her. The path forward was still uncertain, but at least now Camilla knew she was not fighting alone. The investigation had taken a crucial turn, and justice might finally be within reach. The confrontation came 3 days later in the king's formal reception room. Lady Victoria had been summoned along with Camilla, and the atmosphere was tense with anticipation. The king sat in his high-backed chair, looking older and wearier than Camilla had ever seen him. Her husband stood by the window, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Captain Williams and Lieutenant Morrison stood near the door with folders containing their evidence. Lady Victoria entered the room with her characteristic confidence, her posture perfect and her expression calm. She wore a powder blue suit and pearls, every inch the proper royal relative. When she saw Camilla, her lips thinned slightly, but otherwise she showed no reaction. "This is highly irregular," Lady Victoria said, addressing the king directly. "I have been subjected to invasive questions and accusations based on the testimony of a junior maid and some circumstantial evidence. I demand to know why my word is being questioned." "Your word is being questioned because the evidence contradicts it," Lieutenant Morrison said firmly. She opened one of her folders. "Lady Victoria, you stated that you were simply walking the corridors on the night in question because you could not sleep. However, security footage shows you exited your room at precisely 1:53 in the morning and proceeded directly to the corridor outside Her Highness's apartment. You were carrying a small bag. 23 minutes later, you returned without the bag. Can you explain this?" "I do not recall carrying any bag," Lady Victoria said coolly. "Perhaps the camera angle creates that impression." "We enhanced the footage," Captain Williams interjected. He pulled out several printed photographs. "You can clearly see a small velvet bag in your left hand. A bag identical to the ones used to store items from the royal jewelry collection. We found that exact bag hidden in a storage closet on the 3rd floor. Your fingerprints are on it. A flicker of something, fear or anger, crossed Lady Victoria's face before she regained her composure. This is circumstantial. You are building a case on shadows and suppositions. Then let me add more substance, Lieutenant Morrison continued. We obtained access to your phone records. On the evening before Her Highness attempted to leave, you made a call to Captain Williams' office at 11:47 in the evening. That call lasted 6 minutes. Shortly after that call ended, Palace security was alerted to Her Highness's departure plans. Captain Williams looked uncomfortable but confirmed the information.
I did receive an anonymous call that night tipping me off.
The caller used a voice distortion device, but we have since traced the call back to a phone registered under Lady Victoria's assistant's name. My assistant uses that phone for various palace business, Lady Victoria said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. Anyone could have accessed it. We also examined your financial records as you eventually gave permission for, Lieutenant Morrison said. 2 weeks ago, you paid a substantial sum of money to the car service driver, who was supposed to transport Her Highness to the airport. The payment was listed as a donation to his family. When we questioned him again, he admitted that you approached him and asked him to inform you immediately if anyone from the palace tried to hire his services for a discreet departure. The room fell silent. The evidence was mounting, each piece adding to an undeniable picture of deliberate sabotage. Camilla watched as Lady Victoria's perfect composure began to crack. Why? The question came from Camilla's husband, his voice breaking. Victoria, we grew up together. You are family. Why would you do this to my wife? Why would you try to destroy her? Lady Victoria turned to face him, and for the first time, raw emotion showed on her face. Because she does not deserve you. She never did. I have known you since we were children. I understood your world, your responsibilities, your destiny. I could have been the perfect partner for you, someone who truly belonged in this life. Instead, you chose her. She gestured dismissively at Camilla, an ordinary woman with no understanding of royal duty, no appreciation for tradition. She tried to run away, which proves she was never worthy of being your wife. So you ensured she would be caught, the king said slowly, understanding dawning. You tipped off security, and then you planted the bracelet to make certain she would be permanently disgraced. I was protecting this family, Lady Victoria said, her voice rising. Protecting the reputation of the crown. She was going to abandon her duties, create an enormous scandal. I simply made certain that when she was caught, the consequences would be severe enough that she could never return. You framed an innocent woman, Lieutenant Morrison said. You committed theft from the royal collection and falsely implicated Her Highness in that theft. You betrayed the trust of this family for your own jealous purposes. I acted to preserve the dignity of the crown, Lady Victoria insisted, but her words sounded hollow even to herself. The king stood slowly, his face grave. Lady Victoria, you have brought shame upon yourself and this family. Your actions were not those of a protector, but of someone consumed by envy and spite. You will be removed from all royal functions and positions. Your access to the palace will be permanently revoked. Furthermore, the matter of the theft will be referred to the proper legal authorities. You will face criminal charges. You cannot do this to me, Lady Victoria said, her composure finally shattering completely. I am family. I was born into this world. You would choose her over me? I choose justice over favoritism, the king replied. And I choose to correct the terrible wrong you have done. Captain Williams, please escort Lady Victoria from the palace. She has 1 hour to collect her personal belongings. As Captain Williams took Lady Victoria's arm and led her from the room, she cast one final venomous look at Camilla. You still do not belong here. You will never truly be one of us, no matter what happens now. After she was gone, silence filled the room. The king turned to Camilla, his expression softer than she had ever seen it. Your Highness, I owe you a profound apology. I allowed my suspicions and prejudices to blind me to the truth. You have been treated unjustly, and for that I am deeply sorry. Camilla nodded, accepting the apology but feeling no triumph. Thank you, Your Majesty. But the fact remains that I did try to leave. Lady Victoria was wrong in her methods, but she was not wrong that I wanted to escape. And why did you want to escape? Her husband asked quietly, stepping forward. Help me understand. Help us all understand what drove you to such desperation. She took a breath, choosing her words carefully. because I felt invisible, because every day I was criticized for not being enough, not understanding enough, not belonging enough, because I lost myself trying to become what everyone else wanted me to be. I did not want to leave my marriage. I wanted to leave the prison that my life had become. The king considered this. Then we must discuss how to change that. If you felt like a prisoner here, then we have failed in our duty to welcome you as family. Perhaps some distance and independence would benefit everyone. You could maintain your own residence, have your own schedule, pursue your own interest while still fulfilling your obligations. You would allow that? Camilla was surprised. The alternative is to lose you entirely, the king said pragmatically, which serves no one. My son loves you, even if he has done a poor job of showing it lately, and despite everything, I believe you care for him as well. A marriage can survive many things if both parties are willing to adapt and compromise. Camilla looked at her husband, really looked at him for the first time in months. She saw regret in his eyes and guilt, but also hope. I do not know if we can fix what has been broken between us, she said honestly, but perhaps we could try to build something new, something more honest and equal than what we had before. He crossed the room and took her hands in his. I want to try. I want to be better, to be the partner you deserve. No more letting my family dictate our relationship. No more allowing you to be treated as less than you are. Lieutenant Morrison cleared her throat gently. If I may, Your Highness, there is one more matter. The young maid, Sophie, who came forward with crucial testimony. She is concerned about retaliation from other staff members loyal to Lady Victoria. Sophie will be promoted and given a substantial bonus for her bravery, the king said immediately. Make it clear to all staff that anyone who treats her poorly will answer to me directly. She displayed the kind of courage and integrity we should all aspire to. Thank you, Camilla said. She risked everything to tell the truth. Over the following weeks, dramatic changes swept through the palace. Lady Victoria was formally charged with theft and making false accusations. The trial would be public and sensational, but Camilla found she did not care about the scandal anymore. The truth had come to light and her name had been cleared. More importantly, her relationship with her husband began to heal, slowly and carefully. They started having dinner alone twice a week, real conversations where they talked about their fears and hopes. He moved back into their shared apartment, but they maintained separate spaces within it, acknowledging that they both needed room to breathe. She began pursuing her own charitable interests, without seeking approval from the family. She established her own office, hired her own staff, and created a life that felt authentic rather than performed. The king kept his word about allowing her more independence. She spent part of each week at a cottage in the countryside, a place where she could garden and read and simply exist without the constant weight of royal expectations. Her husband visited often, and slowly they rediscovered the affection that had brought them together in the first place. Sophie became Camilla's personal assistant, a position she embraced with enthusiasm and dedication. Together, they worked on various projects supporting education for young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. It gave Camilla purpose and allowed her to make a real difference beyond symbolic appearances. The scandal of Lady Victoria's betrayal eventually faded from the headlines, replaced by other news and other dramas. But Camilla never forgot the night she had tried to escape, or the guards who had stopped her at the gate. That night had been a turning point, though not in the way she had imagined. She had wanted to run from her problems, but instead, she had been forced to confront them directly. The confrontation had been painful but ultimately necessary. Standing at that same palace window where she had watched the rain fall on the night of her planned escape, Camilla reflected on how much had changed. She was still in the palace, still married, still carrying the burden of royal duty, but now she did so on her own terms, with her voice heard and her needs acknowledged. She had not gained the complete freedom she had sought that night, but she had gained something perhaps more valuable, the freedom to be herself within the structures of her life. The palace was no longer a prison. It was simply a place where she lived, imperfect and challenging but no longer suffocating, and that, she thought, was enough.